Last night, I finally got to see the movie people are calling the scariest of the year. Did Longlegs achieve that, or has this film been majorly overhyped? Let's get into it. Before our legs get long here, I want to first thank the wonderful patrons that support this page. Without all of these names climbing up the screen right now, I wouldn't be able to upload as frequently as I do. Please consider signing up for my Patreon now by clicking on the link in the description below or by pressing the join button on my page. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you all again. Now let's get into the review. As always, I'm going to give a quick spoiler-free review for the folks out there that haven't had a chance to see it yet, followed by a big deep dive into spoilers. On paper, Longlegs is one of the most inventive horror movies of the decade, as it pursues an idea that I found incredibly fascinating. The first two acts kept me engaged with a blossoming mystery and a dark atmosphere. The performances were great, and the technical side of this film was excellent. Intriguing cinematography and a bangin' score. The problem with the film, however, is that none of these nuances really matter if the execution of the story is sophomoric. The film doesn't understand how to show don't tell, leading to an extremely condescending hand-holding reveal that shatters any momentum this flick built like glass on concrete. The story itself is admittedly original, and I can't say I've seen this done before, but the reveal is relayed to you in the worst way imaginable. I left the theater feeling like I just walked out of the pitch meeting for Longlegs, not so much having the satisfaction of watching a terrifying horror film. The creepy vibe and bitter atmosphere the film created didn't stick with me after watching it for that reason. I also didn't really find Longlegs to be as scary as the marketing would suggest. Sure, it has some creepy moments from the super over-the-top Nick Cage, and the satanic visuals were cool, but I actually found the humor of this movie to be the most effective element. Fleeting moments of reprieve that made the packed theater I was in chuckle. I'm dying to get into spoilers, so to wrap this up, I implore you to avoid any early reviews of this flick and just go into it blind. I would still class this flick as a must-see for avid horror fans despite its lack of effectiveness. The performances and build-up alone make this one worth watching, but it's entirely short of a pulse-pounding experience that will, quote, get under your skin. Alright, it's time to get deeper into these Longlegs, so for those who haven't seen it yet, go watch the film and come on back. Spoilers ahead, you have been warned. Longlegs is a fatally flawed masterpiece that might impress me if I heard Oz Perkins pitching this at the bar, but falls short of being effective because that's all it ends up becoming, a pitch for a good horror film. The film starts off by laying the seeds of its complicated twist. We see a young Lee Harker at home as she's visited by an unrecognizable Nick Cage. Throughout the movie, we cut back to this scene taking place in 1974, where her mother gets involved and doesn't come to a resolution until the big reveal. I love the changing aspect ratio that indicates a shift in the timeline throughout. The style of this movie is pure perfection. Perkins lets Nicholas out of the cage for his entire performance here that doesn't lead to a scary performance as the misleading marketing would tell you, but rather a super creepy yet hilarious performance. I really enjoyed the character of Longlegs, although it's not at all what I was expecting. This movie isn't as grotesque as you would think it would be either. The vast majority of kills in the flick are done off-screen or explained to you in detail as they happen elsewhere. I didn't find any of this effective in the slightest. The only scenes that really got a reaction out of me were a lousy jump scare about halfway through and a gross reveal of a mother's corpse covered in maggots. That was shockingly the most disgusting moment of the film. That scene they teased in the marketing so much where Lee Harker goes in to talk to Longlegs just shows Nick Cage's face getting bloody as he smashes it against the metal table. I really thought that this was gonna be more disturbing. Like maybe he was gonna start ripping off pieces of his face leading to his death? That would have been brutal. I really thought based on the cryptic advertising that they would have more to show us here in the film, but I guess not. Micah Monroe is by far my favorite character, playing the spiraling Lee Harker. Despite some frustrating decision-making on her part in the third act, Lee feels like an unreliable narrator at times due to her false memory. You constantly see her looking down, opposed to making eye contact with the people around her, showing off her clear social anxiety and reluctance. She admits early on that she didn't want to be an FBI agent, rather an actress, which spells out her Clarice Starling-inspired motivation. I really didn't think I'd be saying this either, but the most effective scene of this movie for me was at the beginning when Lee and Agent Carter, no, not that Agent Carter, go to a bar after work. He drinks as she relays what she's uncovered about the seemingly cold Longlegs case. It was established beforehand that many of the victims had a daughter whose birthday fell on the 14th of different months. This leads to Carter being too drunk to drive, and Harker takes him home. He insists that she comes in to meet his family, which got a laugh laugh out of me. As she goes inside, Carter's daughter asks if she wants to see her bedroom. Carter gives her a commanding look, and it immediately cuts to Harker sitting on the little girl's bed in a very awkward position. This whole sequence is as hilarious as it is excellent character building. You get a lot of the necessary components of Harker's character from this conversation, and it shows off Agent Carter as a family man. The problem is that they make it way too obvious as to what's going on here. The moment his daughter asks Harker to come to her birthday party, I had a pretty clear picture of how the third act was going to go, considering the hints that these characters were somehow unknowingly connected to this long-standing case. It's a little sloppy, but far from the film's biggest issue. The third act reveal of this film is frustratingly condescending, yet really intriguing. The idea is certainly there, with Longlegs needing an accomplice to place these Trojan horse dolls inside of the homes of his victims. But why would they reveal this over a montage with voiceover? It came off to me at first as if writer-director Oz Perkins felt his audience was too stupid to understand what was happening in his film so far. It shattered the nightmarish and bleak buildup this movie had over me up until this point. It was just really pretentious, not so much for the substance, but the delivery. Again, it feels like Oz is pitching the best horror flick ever to me at the bar. I wish the film would have kept its viewers submerged past the reveal. Instead, this movie doubles down for another disappointing scene to close out the film. Lee awakens in the basement of her mother's house, where Longlegs has been hiding, and races over to Agent Carter's place. Cool reveal, but also I don't care at this point. She's kind of too late, as the family is sitting there with a doll of their daughter on the couch across from Lee's mother. The film yet again explains to you that Carter is going to kill his wife in the kitchen, but refuses to show you anything. His wife also complies and goes to the kitchen with him, which again doesn't build any sort of tension for me. It gets even more frustrating as Lee makes an out-of-character decision here to freeze up and do nothing but stand there. What I got from her character before this is, yes, she's shy and reluctant, but powerful and focused. Lee Harker from Acts 1 and 2 would have ran into that kitchen and threatened to shoot Carter had he tried to kill his wife. We saw something incredibly similar to this when Lee was first introduced. After Lee lets Carter kill his wife for some reason, she shoots him and her satanic mother, and holds their child close as a montage of past scenes closes the film out. This mashup of Hereditary and The Silence of the Lambs fails to scare because it doesn't understand how to show, not tell. There aren't actually any rules to writing a script, but there are ways to tell a story in a more intriguing fashion based on what you're going for. Here, the horror doesn't work at all for this specific reason alone. Nearly every other element to Longlegs is so effective for me, which is the disappointing part. Longlegs could have been the horror movie of the year had they just adjusted their approach. This movie has an unsettling score that's still bouncing around in my head, some great performances from some of my favorite horror actors, and beautiful cinematography. The execution of the storytelling is fumbled so hard, however, that it didn't really affect me besides a few creepy moments and some goofy character exchanges. I want to make one last point about Longlegs and director Oz Perkins. I think that Perkins admires his father's legacy a lot. Anthony Perkins was and will always be an unforgettable facet to horror history for his performance in Psycho, a movie that many call the most influential horror film of all time. No arguments there. Psycho paved the way for modern-day slasher films and psychological horror. To this day, the film that originally came out in 1960 is still an excellent watch, and 99% of it has stood the test of time. There is one element to Psycho that many have criticized over the years, and it is, in my opinion, the film's only flaw. Psycho's reveal comes when Vera runs down the stairs and finds the corpse of Norman's mother sitting in a chair. Norman runs in dressed as his mother with a knife as he's apprehended. Visually, you learn from this scene that Norman has some crazy mommy issues and is clearly the one who killed Vera's sister. We also learn from this iconic ending that Norman believes to be his mother as we listen to his internal monologue. This is all pure perfection in terms of a good psychological horror reveal, but it's the scene with the psychiatrist that I would argue is unnecessary. The psychiatrist spells out all of this information that has already been made clear to the audience based on those aforementioned scenes. In the year of our Lord 1960, this was probably necessary. No one had seen anything this intricate in film before, which at the time makes total sense. Now, in 2024, the formula has definitely changed. Audiences are better equipped to tackle a more complex story in the space of 90 minutes, because we have seen movies that have done something like this before. Heck, in 100 years, we'll be looking at some of the films we consider today as classics to be ineffective at some points for whatever reason too. I can't blame Perkins for wanting to follow that original format to a T. I'd look back on that too with rose-colored glasses if I was in his shoes. While this is all speculative, I couldn't help but make that connection walking out of the theater. Longlegs would have been too much for the people of 1960 to handle, and would have certainly made people throw up, just like The Exorcist. It would have been considered one of the greatest horror films of all time had it came out then. After seeing movies like Hereditary and The Shining that do such a great job at not spoon feeding you everything going on, I can't accept anything less than that to truly scare me anymore. Those movies are terrifying, watching these characters slowly fall into a situation that seems inescapable. Both of those films are suffocating with dread for choosing to keep its audience in the dark with as many elements as it possibly can to still then push its narrative. I don't have a rating for Longlegs now because I think in time I will learn to appreciate this movie more, but as of now, I just feel disappointed. While it didn't move the needle for me, there are many elements of this flick to love. Just like last year's The Outwaters, I think I appreciate this film for being so unique, but the approach doesn't make me feel an intended emotion. I'm just frustrated that I sat through all of that buildup for no punch. In a more vulgar way to put it, I feel like Longlegs edged me out and denied me of a... Okay, I think that might be too far even for YouTube, but I think you get the point. What did you all think of Longlegs? I'm curious to hear from people who were scared of this movie and why it worked for you, so please leave me something about your experience with the film down below. Remember, everyone is going to have a different take on the film, so be kind to each other in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.